time to analyze the first 6 rounds of this NRL season and how it's going to impact us and our NRL fantasy teams and the types of players that we want to be selecting at the beginning of seasons. We do always know that the ball is thrown around a little bit less for the most part in the opening few rounds. And this could play a big factor in the types of players you select in your side. And what we do like to usually go for is a lot of middles in our side. So the 13s, the big minute props, and obviously our hookers as well are going to be really, really important. And, you do see a few of those edges can be sort of hit and miss sometimes, because if the game is played a little bit through the middle, their tackle numbers can be a little bit down. Sometimes they aren't getting as good a ball as they would hope so. And then obviously scoring tries on the back of that sometimes can be good or bad depending on the type of game that's being played. So when I'm looking at the first 6 rounds here, what I am focusing on is the types of games that are likely to be higher scoring and have a lot more tries in them. I'm also looking at the games that are going to be a lot closer and a lot more physical, potentially through the middle there as well. And you can just imagine what a Panthers v Storm, Panthers v Broncos type of game is going to be like. We understand that Panthers, the Broncos are a couple of teams where the 2 clear teams where the lowest amount of fantasy points are scored against them. You should have a look at games like the Kalen Ponga game last year where he scored a try and got under 17, I think it was, in that game, in amongst all of the other games where he scored 60 plus and was absolutely incredible. So that's definitely something that we need to look into when you're selecting your opening side. So I've just jotted down a few teams that I find fairly interesting to start with. And this is based on, most likely, these kind of games are going to be a bit more high scoring and more chance of your outside backs, your halves, and sort of your edges to get more points through attacking stats. And that's the Dolphins, the Titans, and the Sharks to kick things off. So let's look at the Titans while we're here, and a Dragons game to kick things off. I imagine it'll be fairly high scoring. You could see something in the sort of 20s if their defense should be up to scratch, obviously, but these are 2 teams that aren't noted for their defenses. So this could be where those outside backs like a Jaden Campbell could do fairly well if he went for a Moses Sully or something like that, like we spoke about in that previous video. Or a Zach Lomax and these types of players there for sure, or potentially the edges on the Dragons could be of interest to our side. So that's that one for the Titans. Obviously, the bye in round 2 is tough, but Bulldogs and Dolphins following that in round 3 and 4, before the Cowboys in round 5, who are very hot and cold with their defense, and then the Raiders, who it could be a bit more of a defensive game, but it will depend on where they're at the moment, heading into this season with a lot of their rookies, and do they have that same defensive grit that we're used to seeing from them. So Titans, guys, expect a little bit more of an open, free-flowing game for their beginning 6 rounds with that one bye in round 2. The Dolphins as well having their bye in round 3, but Cowboys and Dragons, 2 of the same teams we just spoke about. The Titans away, again, same thing. The Tigers expect a little bit higher scoring there, and then the Broncos will be their lowest scoring game in that 6 rounds with their bye in round 3. So you could potentially be looking at an Averillo in there for your starting side. It could be Jack Bostock, who potentially gets that wing spot there that we're unsure of at the moment. But there are a couple of guys to potentially have a look at in the outside backs. And if Lemuelu's fit and firing on that edge, could be a few things there. And then the Sharkies. So a few guys to look at are the Britton Okoras, the Nico Hines. It could be Jesse Ramian and these types of players there. And whoever gets that edge. Does KL Ero get it? There's a few things to think about there, but the Warriors away will be a tougher one to start. But then the Dogs, Dragons, Raiders in their next 3, and then Bunnies can sometimes be a high-scoring game as well. So that's something to note down for the Sharkies there as well. They're the 3 teams that you want to look at there. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum there. So that first one, you're looking at more of the try scorers, the free-flowing nature there to get those points. And sometimes that means that the middles in those teams can struggle a little bit more than what they could in other games that are a bit low scoring. Because remember, when a try is scored, it's a lot of time being used to kick the goal, to get things set up, to get the ball back in play. And if you're a middle, you want that ball in play as much as possible. And sometimes, or a lot of time in those games, if it's a 30 to 24 type of game, the ball's not in play enough. So let's go to some of the teams that have the tougher schedule. And that's actually some of our best teams in the comp, in the Panthers, in the Broncos there, the Storm, and the Roosters. So the Storm, we'll start with them to kick things off. Panthers, Warriors, Knights. So the Knights game might be a little bit more free-flowing as well as the Warriors, but we know what a Panthers matchup can be. So the middles in these sides, potentially the edge back rowers getting lots of tackles, could be a good play in here. So if you're looking at the Storm guys, it's obviously the Sean Blaws, the Eli Katoas on the edge. Harry Grant, less likely to get attacking stats, but more likely to go big tackle numbers there, and obviously a fair few missed tackles as well in that. So that's probably the one thing to note with Harry Grant. It's Panthers, Warriors, Knights, bye into Broncos there in that first 5 rounds. So attacking stats might be a little bit lower, defensive stats maybe a little bit higher at that. And he also may be fairly gassed by the amount of tackles that he makes. And, do they play a Garlic on the bench or something like that, like they did in the back end of the season? So there's question marks around the Storm there and any of their outside backs that you may want to look at. So same with Panthers, obviously. It's very hard to select, I think, any of their outside backs just to begin the year. There's going to be, they obviously the best team in the comp, so they could come out and dominate against some of the great teams as well. In Storm, Eels, their kind of bogey team. The Broncos, the Roosters, and Eagles in their first 5 before a bye. So there's no real domination teams there. And again, middles in that, like the Isaiah Yo's, you'd imagine will play the 80 minutes each and every week. Cleary as captain, does he get a lot of his stats in base, like through kick meters, the tackles, and obviously running the footy with some potential attacking stats in each one? But is he a sort of must-have player to have at the start? I don't know if, would you say Hines is probably a little bit more important at the same price just with that start? You could do, but it's Nathan Cleary is Nathan Cleary, that's for sure. So Scott Sorensen or someone I'm thinking about on that edge. Like, does Liam Martin play big minutes? Does Sorensen get the 80? They're questions we'll need to try and find out as well. I obviously mentioned the Broncos in there as well, and the Roosters. So Broncos with the Roosters, Bunnies, Panthers, Cowboys, Storm to kick things off as well. And a lot of their guys we're looking at, and the middles could be really, really important. So that's where Payne Haas, I imagine, should score pretty well. Same with Carrigan. Guys like Piakura, if he was to play some decent minutes, there may be some opportunity for attack, but there's a good chance that these are tougher games for him and he doesn't get a lot in attack. But a 399, he's a must-have just on that if he's getting some minutes there, which is cool. But something to know with the Broncos, those middles should be really good. And similar to that with the Roosters. So there's a few middles that we're looking at. Obviously, the Spencer Lenyus, the Terrell Mays, these types of guys, potentially if Angus Crichton gets that spot, and Siwa Wong. So lots of guys to look at in the Roosters and probably avoiding their outside backs like Tedesco and looking to pick them up a little bit later. Maybe when the Bulldogs come around in round 5. Could be the look at some of those outside backs, that's for sure. And then a lot of the middling teams, so the Warriors, Knights, Dogs, Tigers, Raiders, Cows, Bunnies, whoever else I missed in that one, Eels maybe. Yeah, so a bunch of those teams there are all fairly middling. So you could get lucky with outside backs and the like with these types of teams through that first sort of 5 or 6 rounds, obviously. You could get some really good middling stats, so good tackle numbers, good run meters and the like there as well. Halves should be fairly neutral. Some games will have a multitude of try assists or tries, and then other games they'll be having big tackle numbers and kick meters. So I think these are the middling teams there are probably the ones you want to look at a little bit more, just because a lot of the time we think teams have a really good run and it doesn't end up happening. But these middle ones here, so you have, I said you'll have games where you'll get lots of tackles and stuff through the middle, so you might get a big base stat game, and then the next game you'll get like a little bit lower in base stats, but you might get a few more tackle breaks and an offload. So I think it's a pretty safe smorgasbord there that you can get in a multitude of different ways. You can score those points there as well. I suppose the big thing to look at now, guys, is that buy section there, and it's not something to worry about too much. The main reason we're worrying about the Tigers and the Titans is just in the outside backs. If you are picking Jaden Campbell like myself, it's going to be very hard to pick a secondary Titans center or wing fullback. If it's someone from another position, it's the middle or the edge or the hooking position, something like that, then that's not a problem at all. But if they're two from a similar position that you need cover from, then that makes it pretty tough. Tigers, if you can have one player there from the Tigers, that could be really, really important just to be able to loop in that first round. That would be great. So definitely look at that, but you wouldn't want, again, a center or a wing fullback from the Tigers at this point. You could start with a sort of an Isaiah Papali'i or a Bateman, something like that, but I think that would be pretty tough, just having too much cash on the sideline there when we're not exactly sure if they're going to come out and absolutely dominate. So that's the big thing with the Tigers and the Titans. But definitely look at these players, Tigers from round 2 or 3, once we see who they've named. Titans, obviously, after that round 2 bye, those other Titans could be guys to have a look at with their nice draw, as we spoke about there as well. Dolphins in round 3. I think these guys are fine to start with. I doubt we start with many more than one, whether it's Averillo, whether it's Jeremy Marshall-King. As I said, he has opportunities here, Jeremy Marshall, to be able to get some attacking stats in those try assists close to the line and the like, but then also have a decent chance at some base stats with games against the Broncos, potentially the Cowboys as well, to begin their starting outfit. So that's definitely an interesting one with the Dolphins. A Storm in round 4. So yeah, Harry Grant with the Sean Blaw. There's a few guys as potential options there for sure, with Pappy as well. So just be aware of that coming into round 4, that you'll need to have some cover. But if it's Harry Grant and it's Pappy and then it's Blaw, if you had all 3, that's 1 in each position. So, and they're very separate to each other, given hooker, second row usually can mix with the edges can mix with the mids there. And then Pappy's by himself down below. And you should have a good idea. You've got Jaden Campbell back playing, so he can slot in. So that one's probably not too bad. The big question mark there is then by the time you get to the Sharks bye, if you have Nicho Hynes in your team, then making sure you have one of Payne Haas, a Cam Murray, who's obviously someone that in that Bunnies side there, which I've got in that sort of neutral range, that he could potentially score some tries in and amongst getting some really good base stats in that thinner field. In Vegas, he's definitely someone on my mind, Cam Murray, as a potential option. But good base stats and bigger minutes as well is something to look at with those middles, I should say, just before we move on any further. But the round 5 and 6 bye to finish things off. So Sharkies with Nicho Hynes, obviously, so making sure you have one of those middles or Cleary to be able to captain in round 5. And then same thing, if you have Cleary, then potentially grabbing Nicho Hynes, if you don't have him already, in round 6 for the Rabbitohs game, to have him as your captain in that one. That could be really, really helpful. Obviously, the Broncos here have the Dolphins, so you could captain Payne Haas easily in that one. And then the Rabbitohs have the Sharks in that round 6. So if you didn't have Nicho Hynes or couldn't get him to get to him at the price, then I think that Rabbitohs Sharkies game could be a really good one for someone like Cam Murray. You could look at a guy like Mitch Moses or something like that if you need them by that point. But that's the first 6 rounds for you there, guys. There's obviously so many different ways to go about it. Try to have at least one person on the bye each and every week so that you can loop. I think looping such an important factor in this game, and if you aren't able to do that, then it's you're very much guessing, and you can go, oh, I'm so unlucky, my 5th reserve or whatever come out and he's been averaging 25, and this game he got a 50 with a double, right? And you're really frustrated by that. Whereas if you have the one looper at least, and that guy plays early and scores really well, then you can take that score and it's great, and you don't have to stress or be annoyed by that. And the worry that you have when someone's playing, you're like, I want them to make money and do well, but I don't want them to do well at the same time, because then you miss out on that score. So that's something I think is really, really important. For the Tigers, guys, it's going to be hard to select someone in that Tigers at a cheaper price. That's why I'm looking at Latu Fainu there as the guy that potentially will play at some point. And if he doesn't, he can be a looper over the first few rounds. But we usually see those cheapies, those young fellas, that they come in and they eventually get a spot at some point. So that's where I'm looking at the moment. And then round 2 is easy with Campbell. Round 3 potentially is easy with like a Marshall King or one of their other options. I think someone will come up if you don't start with any, for sure. Or you could have a concussion, an injury or something in that week, which would be fine, which is important from there. And then in round 4, we should all have one. Same with Sharks, same with the Panthers bye. So that's the first 6 rounds to start the season, guys. We'll do the first 6, then we'll do sort of round 7 to 12 there. And a lot of that will be, we'll do that a little bit later, but that'll be working towards your bye planning for sure. And then we'll have the bye period, and then we'll have the finish off section. So we'll split this up into 4 videos, either across the preseason or as close to the start as possible, or even during. We'll see how we go in that one, see what you guys want and see what you like. Just let me know in the comments below. But thank you for being in this one. I thought that was cool to look at, and let me know if you have any further thoughts on that or any opinions on the contrary. Have a good one, guys. See you later.